I wasn't acknowledging just how much the stress was affecting me. And so I wasn't asking for help, because I think that it's very easy for people to just feel like they can sort it out by themselves, or it's, and I think I was kind of hyper independent as well, which has kind of led to, I didn't realize all of these patterns that I had was causing a specific kind of dysfunction in my life based on a kind of previous trauma. And so the Ignite Your Power is much less being about my business and actually being about dealing with patterns that were dysfunctional. And so I feel like it's cracked me open in the most beautiful way possible. And the people in there are just it's like a nest of love and warmth and care, and it's just so unconditional, and we're all really such rooting for each other, and it feels so real in the sense of, there's no unrealistic, and I'm not saying let's put limit on things, but I'm saying it feels very working on the foundation first.
Hello and welcome to the True Wealth podcast, where we ask the question, what does it mean to be truly wealthy in this digital age of distraction and disconnection? I'm your host, Betty Cotton Birtles, blues singer, Buddhist, mum of two, and former global shoestring adventurer turned hypnotherapist and mindset coach. I believe that by healing our past and changing our beliefs, we may achieve not only the external successes, the house, the relationship, the money, the impact, but also internal success, the ability to actually enjoy our lives, because it's the joy and happiness that makes it all worthwhile. Join me as I invite friends, colleagues, and esteemed teachers to discuss means of enhancing enjoyment in our lives, following our inspiration as individuals to create whatever it is that lights us up, so that we might radiate that energy out into the world via our businesses or our day-to-day lives, with the intention that all beings may benefit. I believe that this is where true wealth lies. Welcome to the show. Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of the True Wealth podcast. Today's guest is Ella Carey, who is a naturopathic nutritionist. She lives in Cardiff. She's a single mum. And she's also been a part of my program, Ignite Your Power, for the past 6 months. And so this conversation it was beautiful, actually. It was really lovely to, despite Ella having been in the program for 6 months, I haven't had the opportunity to dig so deep into her business and her expertise, and she really is an expert in her field. And she talked to me in this conversation, you'll hear all about the natural ways that she helps adults and children to heal using food, nutrition, kinesiology, and types of energetic healing as well. Just a big blend of healing modalities that she practices. And she's got an almost 100% success rate with eczema. She's opening an eczema clinic in Cardiff, but she also sees people online. So really, she's an expert in the microbiome and natural healing through food. And I just found that so interesting to ask her about and to hear about. because obviously, like so many of us these days, I'm aware of the importance of the gut health and how that relates to other aspects of health, but I haven't actually sat down with an expert to ask questions about it before. So it was great to hear about Ella and her work, and also to hear about the impact that Ignite Your Power has had on her and her work and her own personal development. Yeah, she was really complimentary about the process and how it's been to be a part of what has been the second iteration of Ignite Your Power. And it's been a really special group, as you will hear. So, without further ado, this is my conversation with Ella Carey of Full Spectrum Health. Hello and welcome to the very lovely Ella Carey. Hello and welcome to the very lovely
Really
Ella
lovely to be here.
Carey. Yeah, it's really nice to have you on the podcast.
Thank you. Really lovely to be here.
I'm very excited about this because Ella has been part of my program, Ignite Your Power. And over, how long have we been going now? 5 months? I feel like we've got a month left. So it's been lovely over the course of the last 5 months to get to know you and the little crew in Ignite Your Power. And do you want to tell us a bit about you and what you do and your background, Ella?
Yeah, lovely. So thanks for having me on, Betty. I'm really excited to just sit here with you and have this chat with you. I'm a naturopathic nutritionist based in Cardiff, and I have 3 boys, and I'm a single mom. So kind of Ignite Your Power for me was really about being able to find a sense of real kind of balance and power in each area of my life, and kind of changing this story from, or this narrative from kind of feeling powerless to, powerful. So so that's what I do, and I'm currently kind of transitioning my clinic from COVID. We were all online, and so I'm currently transitioning it back into kind of the physical world with a different niche, a different kind of focus. And I'm really excited about getting back into just seeing people face to face again properly, kind of day in, day out.
Yeah, so tell us more. Tell us more about that. And also I totally resonate with what you're saying. I'm excited as well about similarly planning out different ways of bringing in-person things. So I really feel the same feeling there.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit more.
It feels such a treat to sit with people in person, doesn't it? And just kind of, I think that having been taken away makes me realize just that energetic exchange that's just so valuable when I'm sitting with people, in my work. So as a naturopathic nutritionist, and I'm a kinesiologist as well. So I'm planning, so the move that I'm doing is I'm opening a clinic that's much more focused on kind of inflammatory conditions in children. So things like eczema, also things that anxiety, or children who have been diagnosed on the autism spectrum and who parents want to go down maybe the non-medical route. So kind of looking at biochemistry, looking at gut health, looking at genetics, looking at, there's a whole host of ways that we can support children's health that don't require things like steroids or stimulants and things like that for ADHD, for instance. There's just It's really looking at the root cause of why a child might be experiencing such symptoms and adjusting, tweaking that, and supporting the body to really kind of heal itself.
Oh, I love that. Anything that says root cause gets me excited. I guess that's a similarity in the work that we do, isn't it? It's like delving in, looking for where has this come from? And when you just said steroids, my ears pricked up because just this morning, Scarlett, my eldest, who is 8, she's got a slight tendency towards chestiness when she's got a cold. And when we're recording this now, it's September, children are back at school, and of course, like, almost everyone seems to have a cold. And Scarlett, she has this tendency that it goes a bit wheezy. And just this morning, she came in and she said, "Mum, I'm finding it hard to breathe." So I gave her a puff on the inhaler, and I was just like, oh my God, I'm giving my child steroids, which, there's a clearly they're great, they save lives. So, but it was actually this morning I gave that puff to her, and then I realized, okay, this is actually the end of this inhaler. It was empty, and I was like, oh, are we going to go back to the doctor and get another one? And I was just thinking to myself, I literally had the thought process of like, I wonder what else I could do. And now look, here you are talking about how there are other things. So please tell me all your professional wisdom and thoughts on the matter.
Well, if you brought Scarlett into my clinic with asthma, I would want to kind of have a look at, when it started. Often, so I work very holistically, and I look at emotional health as well. And we run lab tests and food sensitivity tests and things like that. But often asthma will be, if it comes on suddenly, it can be an emotional cause.
Yeah.
In Chinese medicine, the lungs are the seat of grief, for instance. And so there's an idea of kind of looking at either in what can be going on there. But then it might just be if we look at all of the levels of the body. So, the physical level is dairy is very much the connection between asthma and mucus causing issues. So we would look at maybe a finger prick test to see any food sensitivities, elimination diet, so maybe taking out dairy just to see how that goes. And then an elimination diet is not always advised with children, just because it's good for them to have a lot of a range of different foods. And so I don't say that lightly with children, but for something like asthma, if it's getting worse, I would definitely say just take dairy out, and then you can put it back very gently. They become mucousy when you put it back. It's a real signifier that yes, dairy is the issue. But often, say maybe she's gone back to school, maybe she's a bit stressed, and the stomach. What happens is when a person is stressed, the system isn't designed to digest food; it's designed for self-preservation. So, the digestion actually shuts down a bit when the body's stressed. So things like dairy or foods that you'd normally be able to digest actually are just much more difficult to digest. So it might be worth switching her to maybe almond milk or goat's milk or something just easier for this moment, just while she's much more mucousy. And the aim of the game is just to remove stress from the body, basically. And
oh, thanks, that's so helpful. I love that. I love this. She's actually not, well, she's not been diagnosed as asthmatic, but she has got this viral induced wheeze. It's just she's got a tendency to, when she gets a cold, it goes to her chest in a way that my other daughter just doesn't have.
So, was there anything different about maybe her birth, or did she have, what happened?
It's really interesting. Shall I tell you about it
briefly?
She was breech, and it was, God, I mean, I'd probably do a whole podcast on her birth story, and maybe that would be an interesting one. Actually, we could do a birth special. Get a load of women together and talk about birth stories. She was breech, and obviously, in case people are listening don't know what that means that the head is up and not down. So it usually, well, I think it's about 3%. I might be wrong, but I think about 3% of babies are born in this way. So it's not uncommon, but it's not the majority of babies come head down. So we only realized she was breech about was Christmas Eve. I went in. She was born January 10th. So yeah, a couple of weeks before, and went into the hospital. They tried to turn her, manually, and it didn't work anyway. So I went, oh God, I'm going to not give you all the details because I feel like I love talking about it, but yeah, let's try and stay on track. When she did come out after a long labor, her body was born, and her head, she had her arms behind her head, and the head was stuck with the shoulders, up, and the arms up, and there was like emergency, everyone running to the room. And then this amazing consultant did this maneuver. I was going to say the Heimlich maneuver, but that's not it. I did know what it was called anyway, where he just swept one of her shoulders. He put a hand in. Sorry for the graphic detail. I'm going to have to put a disclaimer on this. And swept one shoulder down, and then she fired out. But it's really interesting that she's got very sensitive shoulders. She doesn't like me touching her shoulders at all. She calls them her taser spot, and she just
Oh, really?
hates it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that is so interesting. And then what happened after her birth? Was she put in an incubator, or she
No,
given
no, no.
you?
I had to go and be repaired.
Mm.
And so she was just hanging out with her dad for a bit. But yeah, I feel like there's an attachment
Yeah.
thing
Yeah.
that didn't happen because we weren't given that time immediately.
Mm.
Yeah.
And were you given antibiotics after that because of the stitches?
Ooh, God, that's a good question, Ella. I'm not sure. Probably, I mean, is that common? It was quite a.
Yeah, I mean, it depends, I guess, where you were.
I'm not sure.
Um, I I think that it's probably, how old is your daughter?
She's 8.
8. I think it's probably quite common procedure for preventative back then. They didn't
Uh-huh.
now, they're really catching on to how fundamental it is to avoid antibiotics as far as possible.
Oh, so you're
Um,
thinking in the milk? Because I was thinking, why is she asking me about whether I was given?
yeah, yeah.
Oh, wow.
And it can pass over into the milk, and it can really affect
Wow.
the bacteria that's passed over, basically. So,
Yes.
and it will really disrupt the balance of bacteria that you've got even on
Yeah.
your skin.
Yeah.
Um, and so obviously baby is completely sterile when they're born, and so
Yeah.
your initial bacteria are
Yeah.
there, and she might not as well have get normally when a baby passes through the vaginal canal, the birth
Yeah.
canal, their mouth is open a little bit, and so what they get that first part, their
Mm.
first exposure to bacteria is their mother's bacteria from the birth canal. So
Mm.
because her head was in a different way, I
Yeah.
wonder if she didn't get it quite as much as she needed, or
Mm.
I would say that there's a disrupted biome there.
That's exactly what I'd got to actually. I've kind of I can't remember where I got it from, but I had a sense that perhaps because she was born the other way up, she
Mm.
hadn't had that exposure. But I hadn't thought about the antibiotics. So that's an interesting angle. But yeah, thank you. Oh, it's very interesting.
Is she your first or your second?
She was the first, yeah, and then the second came head down at home.
Mm.
It was all a bit more yeah, we
Yeah.
got the skin to, we got all the things, and she's got a much stronger immune system,
Mm.
interestingly.
Yeah. It's so interesting because I thought when I've got 3 boys, and I think as a parent, I thought, okay, that stage is over, move on to the next stage, But actually, what I've come to really, and in my clinic as well, and as a parent, is things don't go away. This first step leads to the second step, and it depends on how we
Mm,
finish that process or that step.
mm,
It really sets us up for the next stage kind of thing. And so if
wow.
something happens or disrupts that first stage, it will affect all the followings, the subsequent stages. So it's really important to go back and fix that.
Gosh. And
Yeah.
so how do you do that? How do you go back and fix something
Well,
that happened when you're born?
yeah, that's where the work comes in, really. It really looks at what the person is needing. And I would
Mm.
say dependent on, and that's why we have so many different modalities. I mean, I would work differently to somebody else, but the way I work is I work with the nervous system,
Mm.
and I work with kind of energy work. So really
Mm.
kind of, I call it presencing. So really tuning
Mm.
into a person's kind of energetic field.
Hmm.
And people are so wise about what's actually going on that when we give ourselves and our body space, our body's always holding that wisdom and
Mm.
holding, your daughter's holding those in their Tesa
Mm.
spots. So
Yeah.
telling you what she needs, she's telling you.
Yeah.
And so instinctively, I don't know your daughter, but if it was my child, I might take them to a cranial osteopath or
Yes. Yeah.
something very gentle, but that supports that nervous system as well.
Yeah.
But for the biome, and what I find fascinating about this work
Mm.
is the way that we think and the way we behave and the way we live affects our microbiome just as much as what we eat.
Yes.
And so
Mm.
it's no good to kind of have a, perfect inverted commas diet,
Yeah.
but then have unresolved trauma or unresolved
Yeah.
emotional,
Oh,
you know.
yeah.
So
Absolutely.
it's just it's just as important. I think we've kind of, as a British Western society, we've pushed aside emotions for so
Mm.
long, and this is where we've ended up in this culture of
Yeah.
really traumatized. We're a very traumatized culture of people.
Absolutely.
And so I think that's why we're really looking to kind of self-healing and, working with the nervous system. And I think that's
Mm.
why the nervous system is such a buzzword at the moment, because
Yeah.
it ties things together in such a sensible and
Mm.
meaning-making way.
Mm. Thank you for explaining that. And one thing that I thought that when you were talking about, oh, it could be, there's emotional reasons as well. One thing that is quite interesting, and it kind of is an interesting tie into the two parts of our conversation today, is that so obviously the way that Ella and I know each other is from my program Ignite Your Power. Now, my journey to launching Ignite Your Power was like I had a lot of emotional blocks and resistance to doing it. And that's been the kind of this emotional getting to the root cause that Ella's talking about. That is what I had to do in order to birth my program. And what is really interesting is the first two times I launched a program, one of my children ended up in hospital. And the first time that that happened, it was Scarlett in hospital with this wheeze. And she wouldn't take the inhaler. At the time, it was like new, we'd just been given it. And or perhaps the first time was maybe, yeah, she just had a wheeze and I didn't recognize it. I wasn't familiar with it. And she wasn't getting enough oxygen and I didn't spot that. And then we ended up, it was awful. We ended up, I think it was during COVID, we ended up going to well, we went to the GP and he was in a full, like, what they called hazmat suit.
Mm.
And it was like quite terrifying for her, but and they gave her the vaporizer or whatever it was called, nebulizer, I think. Anyway, it's so interesting for me that I think she was tuned in to my fear
Mm.
about launching my program. And yeah, it's just curious how her symptoms then manifested, and it was like the day I was launching it.
That is so interesting. And in in I'm fascinated, and this relates, but I'm
Mm.
fascinated with the science of why we feel what we feel and why our bodies do what it does. And my work inevitably takes me to kind of the more etheric or energetic aspect of us. But
Mm.
and in my kind of reading and research and experience, I've come across the idea that within the nervous system, in the nervous system, and heart rate variability and heart kind of coherence, say for instance, thinking about your daughter, her nervous system is absolutely tuned into you, and your heart field. So we all have a heart field of about 5 feet, and if your heart rhythm changed because of stress, that would have created a kind of an impacted the field that she would have picked up on, and subconsciously or below her conscious level, her system would have picked up a stress, and she might not have known where it came from. And so we really do affect each other and especially children, because they are, we are their kind of, how do you describe, we as adults, our patterns and our rhythms are so much more embedded, and children's are just so much more changeable. And so that they regulate themselves to us. So when we're
Mm.
dysregulated, when you're having a really bad day and you just think, this is the only day that I just need you to please just be calm. And that's the day when they don't, because they just pick up on it. It's like they just know. And it's just because their systems are picking up on our dysregulated nervous systems.
Isn't that fascinating? And also not fascinating at the same time. So obvious on one level, isn't it? Because we experience it. And it's great to hear that perhaps the science is talking about the things that we know. I mean, we know we affect each other. When someone's in a bad mood, you feel it, don't you? When you're tuned into the people you live with, you kind of pick up or when someone's experiencing fear or anxiety, it's in the air, and we are herd animals, really, aren't we? We're kind of, not herd, but tribal,
Yeah, absolutely.
We're not designed. I always say designed. I mean, some people might believe that, but we've evolved perhaps to be like that.
Mm.
Yeah. So Ella, I'd be so curious to hear about, what the impact of being, I mean, thank you, by the way, for your expertise. It's so nice to hear a little snapshot, a little insight into your work, and you're clearly an expert at what you do. Oh, before we move on, actually, perhaps you were saying about the eczema clinic. I mean, what kinds of results are you getting for your people, Ella?
Oh, that's a great question. So in my work, kind of since I've been set up since 2017, um, and I'm thinking specifically, for instance, families. One of my favorite stories is I was working with a family. They're two doctors, and I get lots of doctors come to me to work with their children because they don't want to go down the medical route. I guess because they understand its limitations, or they know that nutrition is not included in the medical route. It's not in the conversation. I look forward to the day it is, because I think it would just serve so many more people to even consider nutrition. Anyway, that's another conversation. They brought their daughter to me, who was about 4 years old, if I remember. This was a few years ago, and she wasn't speaking, so she's nonverbal. And she was don't think she had her diagnosis yet, because there's a long waiting list in the UK. And she was very insular. She wasn't engaging with people. There was no eye contact. She just very in her own world. And we worked together for the best part of a year. And this was a lovely family from India, that were working in the UK. And I had a tearful phone call one day, and they said, listen to this. And she was babbling away, talking away. And they said her granddad just walked in the room. And if you can imagine as well, such a tight-knit family and just really concerned about this little girl. And her granddad walked in the room, and she opened her arms, and in her language, she said granddad, and just ran towards him. And so they were just speechless and just so emotional at that change of this little girl that didn't even acknowledge the presence of her granddad before, just, looked at him, looked directly at him and said his name and went towards him. And so, just kind of children coming out of their shells, children being able to, go from non-verbal to verbal.
Yeah.
Um, Eczema is a really lovely one to work with, because it can just be such a bane when a child has eczema. And so many parents just say, I don't want to put steroids on my child, but I don't know what else to do, and they're suffering. And so to support a family to work through something like eczema and come out the other side clear, not just clear skin, but really empowered, knowing about the mechanism of the body and kind of the process that the body goes through, and that things don't happen randomly, and to just really kind of understand. And I love to say to the families that I work with that, I mean, I've been one of these parents with a child with health issues. My child had antibiotics at birth, and so that took us on a long learning journey. And I love to say, to kind of remind people that we're bringing the power back into our laps as parents. And, we're not only understanding what our child needs, but we have the power to nourish them back to health with the food that we're making them. And so, that's kind of, yeah, there's just so many kind of lovely things about my work on so many different levels, not just the results, but the results that you can see, but the kind of the transformational journey that the family go on together.
Beautiful and really heartening and lovely to hear about that. And so I believe, am I imagining this, or did you say you had 100% success rate with eczema?
With eczema, so far, yeah, although after telling you that, one of my clients rang me and she said, I'm having a flare. She'd been to hot yoga. She'd been to kind of hot yoga every day.
Yeah.
And that's just not recommended for anybody with sensitive skin.
Okay.
I think anybody, but anybody with sensitive skin. So she's suddenly going through a flare. So we are kind of
she's knocked your scores.
Not my scores off. But she's an adult, and so with children, so with the children that I've worked with, it's kind of typically it's quite a straightforward process.
Yes, that is, I mean, I can imagine that for any parent who's suffering with a child with eczema, to hear that is, really gives hope.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because
and
it's horrible, isn't it? It's so
really
horrible.
It's so miserable for them, and it's just seeing them scratching, and with the parents that I work with as well, they're all very switched on, and you become an expert in researching and going down rabbit holes and finding out different things, and it can be overwhelming, all of the information, and where to start. So it can be good just to have somebody in your corner. And I run a parents group for families, sorry, who are experiencing or who are healing their children through food. So there's lots of different families on there, and it's really lovely to have that supportive village, really.
That is really, I just want to say, as a parent myself and growing, I feel like personally a bit of a bridge, really, because my parents were, well, my grandmother was a nurse, my aunt was a nurse, and they were very kind of medical. We didn't, it feels like I am attempting to parent my children in a way that's entirely different from how I was parented, in terms of taking care, not entirely, but largely, in terms of thinking about food choices, and and it can feel so confusing to be trying to learn something, and particularly when we're so busy, as we all are, trying to take on, like, learning about nutrition when it's not something that you've been taught.
Mm.
when you're a busy parent, yeah, it can be full on. So I really can imagine how much those families are appreciative of such a
Yeah,
kind of support group.
yeah,
And um, and I wanted to ask, while I remember before it slips my mind, in the case of this non-verbal child, the 4-year-old who greeted her grandfather, what did you do for her? How did you
mm.
get that? Was that purely through nutrition?
Through so yeah, so all what I did with her was we took out the foods that would have been feeding, so working on the basis that the gut and the brain are interlinked,
Mm,
and needing to reduce the toxic load in the gut to reduce the toxic load in the brain, and support those methylation processes and the detoxification processes. And to do that, we just needed to kind of clean up the environment and then
mm,
start to allow the body to encourage the body to start detoxing. Because in children, often in children with inflammation issues or on the autism spectrum or eczema, or, it can manifest in lots of different ways. But what can be at the root of it is, for instance, a genetic SNP that stops the body from
mm,
um, detoxing or producing glutathione, or
mm,
um, or converting certain nutrients into other compounds that help the body to function. So it's really about understanding kind of which parts of the jigsaw puzzle are we missing, or which
mm,
parts kind of do we need to support.
mm.
And once you get those bits in place, the body can just function much better. And so it's really about, for me, the way I work really is kind of making the least changes for the biggest effect.
Making the least changes for the biggest effect. Wow, great. Brilliant. Wonderful. Oh, thanks, Ella. It's really nice to hear about, the kinds of people that you're helping and the work that you're doing. It sounds like you really are an expert in your field, and Cardiff is lucky to have you. And, I
Well, I work all over the world as
yeah, you're
well.
working
So,
on, you're working and taking clients online as well.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
amazing. Isn't that amazing? It
yeah.
blows my mind, really, just the fact that we can be seen by experts all around the world and have clients all around the world. Quite amazing. Okay, so yeah, I'd love to change gears slightly and just ask you about I'm you've been part of my program Ignite Your Power. There's been a group of 7 of you, and it's been lovely. And I'd love to hear. I'm, as you know, I'm going to be opening the doors again for a new cohort of people coming starting in November. And yeah, it'd be really nice to hear from your perspective what that has been like, and however much you'd like to share to help people to
Mhm.
understand whether it's the right thing for them.
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, I am surprised by the journey that I've taken. I think that I naively thought I've done all the healing. I've worked on myself. I just want to focus on my business. And I think when you're either a small business or an entrepreneur and you're often online, you can get you can get kind of distracted by these, glossy people promising 7 figures and kind of, but it feels like kind of a quick fix or so, and I adhere to this in my work as well, that anything that promises something quickly, those changes just will not last, because the body, we need time to to kind of make these changes, to make space for these changes. And so I feel like I've taken the journey in Ignite Your Power in exactly the way that I've needed to, because the reality of where I was coming from was, in my personal life, so my professional life was going well, but my personal life, I was just had gone through a divorce, and at the same time, we'd just gone through COVID, and my children and I had moved to a different city, actually a different country, so from moving from London to Cardiff. And what catalyzed that was my own health issue. So I was paralyzed in 2020 from something called transverse myelitis. And I know that it was stress driven. Like I absolutely know how stressed I was. And I also know that at the same time I was eating well and I was meditating. And so kind of doing all of the things. And this is what I was saying earlier, the fact that I was so stressed and that I was kind of waking up at night and just panicking was kind of the equivalent to just maybe smoking 20 cigarettes and eating McDonald's. And do you know what it wasn't I wasn't acknowledging just how much the stress was affecting me. And so I wasn't asking for help. Because I think that it's very easy for people to just feel like they can sort it out by themselves, or it's and I think I was kind of hyper independent as well, which has kind of led to I didn't realize all of these patterns that I had was causing a specific kind of dysfunction in my life based on a kind of previous trauma. And so the ignite your power is much less being about my business and actually being about dealing with patterns that were dysfunctional. And so I feel like it's cracked me open in the most beautiful way possible. And the people in there are just it's like a nest of love and warmth and care and, and just, it's just so unconditional. And we're all really such rooting for each other. And it feels so real in the sense of, there's no unrealistic, and I'm not saying let's put limit on things, but I'm saying it feels very working on the foundation first. And that's what's felt really important. And I feel that it's been I've been going through such a transformation, and it's kind of like this iceberg thing, if you can see results at the top, then you know that it's been big changes going on underneath. So that's kind of a snippet of the journey.
Yeah, thank you. That's beautiful. I love what you said about the nest. It's just that, yeah, and also the sense of the foundational piece, that in order we can build a house on sand, can't we? And we all know that it doesn't last very long. But yeah, I think that, when we're trying to achieve big things in the world and make a difference and grow our businesses and do these amazing things, we need to be healed.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's funny, isn't it, how we think we are healed and then layers kind of come.
Absolutely. And I think, and I'm sure lots of people can resonate with this, that actually when they're in a position of working with other people, sometimes it's quite isolating because where do they get help from?
Yeah.
And, it can be quite vulnerable to say, actually, I need this, or, it's, and actually a lot of people that I recognize kind of in the helping kind of roles, they often, how do I put this? It's kind of, they have a personality type that might be, it's that Gabor Mate talks about, of kind of putting others before yourself, and kind of not knowing how to say no and not really knowing where your limits are, where your boundaries are. And
Yeah.
that is a right environment for like autoimmune disease. And he actually talks about autoimmune disease, which transverse myelitis is, being a personality type.
Yeah.
And I find that fascinating because I also see that in my work of kind of, high achievers and burnout. That's actually also a personality type that you can relate to specific chemicals or minerals, mineral imbalances. So for instance, high copper, low zinc. And that can lead you to burnout because it's kind of constantly setting yourself impossible standards that you'll just never reach. So you burn out before you reach it. And so for me, healing really is noticing, recognizing these patterns, and then lovingly supporting yourself to readjust as you rebalance these, your internal world and your external world.
Yeah.
And so everything just becomes kinder and easier, and less self-flagellating and
Yeah.
more connecting.
Yeah.
And so there's been huge phenomenal changes going through this process.
Mm. Yeah. What would you say to someone who is on the fence about it?
Hmm. I would say I guess it depends why
Yes.
they're on the fence. Um, but I would just say what what I've really loved is that, Betty, the way that you so generously and genuinely show up for the people in the space. And it's never I've loved how you've been so great with your boundaries of like, I'm available now and I'm not available now. And it's been super clear what is, you know, it's been really clear. And so it, what do I want to say? That you're just so generous with and unconditional, and you hold the space in such a lovely, clean way that it's kind of, I feel like everybody is working on their own things, but then we're all working together at the same time. And so you've created this container, this space of real kindness and real kind of, but also then at the same time, it's not some of these containers that I've been have been kind of codependent, that people are like relying on we all need the person, you know,
Yeah.
who's leading the space or holding the
God.
space. But actually you're so clean and clear about boundaries, and
Mm.
everybody's being super responsible for themselves.
Mm.
Um, and it's just a really, and and even to the price, I feel like you could charge way more than you do,
Yeah.
but you've said, oh, kind of at the moment, this is what feels good to me.
Yeah.
And I feel like that message, or that kind of approach of what feels good, seeps
Yeah.
into every area. It's like,
Beautiful.
you're
Thank you. Yeah.
it's all about, we all feel good. I think that's the really good thing, the really lovely thing as well.
Oh my God, if that was like the literally the only result, isn't that amazing? Like
Yeah.
just come and feel good. But it's so interesting the thing about the price, because like I think you've had experience of these flashy big programs, and I have too. And the sense of like, well, that is achievement and that's how it should be done, or it could be done, or like that's what you should want. And there's been this kind of, I know I've had a deprogramming that was required, and a kind of regrounding that I needed to do after being exposed to those very high prices, and actually realizing that they were empty in what they were offering. Not completely empty, but when I dug in I'm thinking of one particular coach, just how um and I'm grateful for you reflecting back that from your side it has felt safe, because I've paid a lot of money for containers where when I had a complaint or something that I wasn't feeling good about on, in the as a participant, that it was not acknowledged and it wasn't dealt with. And suddenly, like, everything came crashing down, when suddenly, when you lose faith in the person who's supposed to be holding it together, like, it's like a pin just popped.
Yeah.
This whole, I saw it for what it was, just illusion. And then, I have to mention Tad Hargrave, who I came after that that experience. I wouldn't call it awful, but where my illusions got shattered, and then I came to him and licked my wounds and just kind of started looking at how I could build it from a more grassroots, earthy level. And for me, that was about having lower prices, where I could say to myself without a shadow of a doubt, this is a fucking good price for what you're getting, and there's no bad feeling there. So yeah, I really love that you have pointed at that, and I feel really yeah, grateful for that feedback. Thanks, Ella.
And I know that we're running out of time now, but it's really, really, I told myself I wasn't going to work with another business coach or in another business container. You know, I had lost,
Yeah.
for instance, I had signed up to a program because the coach was saying, oh, we've got 5 minutes till this price goes. And I was signing it, and I said to the assistant who was taking my signature, I can't even afford this. This is crazy. If I change my mind, I can get a refund, right? And she was like, no, there's no refunds. And she said, you're tied into the contract now. And so it took me 4 months to get out of the contract. No exchange, no services were
Oof.
exchanged, but I spent £4,500
Jesus.
because she kind of kept saying, oh, you know, you're perfect for this program, perfect for this program, perfect for the program.
Yeah.
And I was like, I cannot afford, I'm a single
Yeah.
mum, and I cannot afford this. And I write to her intermittently all the kind of throughout the year and say, I didn't get any coaching, I didn't get anything for that £4,500.
Oof.
Please,
Yeah.
that is so much money for me.
Yeah.
And she's like, you know, there's no acknowledgement. And her
Yeah.
course, it wasn't even 6 months, which is your course is 6 months, and I think it was something like £8,000.
Oh
Um,
God.
and again, you know, when I look into the teachings, it's all flash, it's all
Yeah.
flashy and all about marketing.
Yeah.
And actually, my nervous system I don't feel good when I'm in that kind of space, because
No.
I can't make good decisions when I'm kind of, you know, being told to rush, and I
Yeah.
don't think that that's good business.
No.
And I just don't, I just, yeah. So I think the coaching world is really a place to be really discerning. Um, but
And what,
yeah.
sorry, Ella, to speak over you. What's happening when people do that, when people behave in such a way, and then they don't give you refunds, and you know, it damages the marketplace. It damages people's faith in the good stuff. Like, I think that's what you were pointing at there, was that after that experience, you said, well, I'm never going to do that again.
I saw myself, I am never working with a coach
Yeah.
again. And even though I've had
Understandably.
some fantastic
Yeah.
coaching, you know, and I really love coaching. And I always actually, at one point in my life, I thought coaching helps me be my best self and all
Yeah.
of those kind of cheesy cliches.
Well,
And
it
I,
should.
you know, and
Yeah.
yeah, and this was just really, for me, quite toxic. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's great that we're talking about this now, and you know, people are starting to talk about it. And I do hope, I mean, more and more people, thanks to Tad Hargrave and other people in that field, certainly for pointing at this and saying how toxic it is, you know, and I do feel like as a result of how bad it is at that end of the spectrum, it has to be really good at the other end of the spectrum, you know, and hence putting a price that is lower than the value that I hope is on offer. Hence, you know, giving 6 months where it used to be 3 months, but I added an extra 3 months. In fact, I care so much about not damaging the marketplace and people finishing with a good feeling that I said, how can I make this even more supportive? And I said, well, I'll just offer lifetime support. So, you know, for forever, as long as I'm doing the business, as long as, well, I mean, there might be a point at which I stop it, but, you know, for now, my intention is that people who go through this program will have the opportunity to access me and each other once a month.
Yeah. And
Yes.
that feels like like you're building a real community, you know,
Thanks for saying that. Yeah.
um, and it's not, yeah, it's kind of, if people resonate with you, then there's no reason why they shouldn't come into your world. Whereas, you know, this coach, it was very divisive, and there was a real sense, I felt like I was in, and I'm sorry to, when I was about 13, I had this experience in a very kind of
30 or 13?
13.
Uh-huh.
I had this experience in a very kind of culty religious, like
Mm.
extremely extreme, you know, religion, church. And they were telling me, if you don't give yourself over now, come to the front of the crowd and be baptized in front of everybody, your family are going to go to hell.
Oh,
And I
Jesus.
had this same kind of feeling with this coach of like, if you don't sign up to my program, you will never be a success.
Yeah.
And I remember that feeling of like, oh my gosh, there's something wrong with me.
Yeah.
And if I don't feel like I can afford it, then I've got a poverty mindset. And
Yeah.
oh,
Oh God.
and so it's
Yeah.
like
But
built on,
that's the message that's given. I mean,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And so I'm really glad to shake that off, but I'm still paying it off now. And
Oh,
that's
Ella, I'm
2 years ago.
sorry. Yeah.
So thank you for doing what you do, and thank you for just being so genuine and yeah, offering just such a lovely, grounded, really grounded and
Mm.
really nurturing space for people like me who,
Mm.
yeah, that need to come like you've done for me what Tad Hargreaves did for you of like
Yeah.
a place to lick your wounds and a place just to kind of
Oh,
rebuild yourself from the ground up
yeah.
in a space that just feels kind of just real and authentic and genuine and kind and yeah, nourishing.
Oh, thanks, Ella. It's been a real pleasure watching you and everyone else just getting these insights and breakthroughs over the course of the program. And of course, we'll continue to do that with, as long as people want to keep dropping in. So we've run out of time for today, but it's been so lovely to hear about the work that you do and, what you're offering. And for anyone who's listening who might not be local to Cardiff, or who is local to Cardiff, who's interested, maybe they've got a child who um or I mean, what is it? Is it children specifically, Ella, or are you working with adults? I mean, give us the pitch.
Yeah, so my children's clinic really is children with inflammatory conditions, so an inflamed system, so on the autism spectrum, gut health
Mhm.
issues, eczema, anxiety, and whose family want to go down the non-medical route, so
Yeah.
food. And then for adults, because their issues are slightly kind of just a little bit more complex.
Mhm.
We normally work on a longer scale I normally work on a longer scale with adults and very holistically. So for adults, I work really where a person with a history of trauma, and they will have a dysregulated nervous system, and that will be impacting their digestion, their
Mm.
nutrition status, their,
Mm.
their gut health, their mental health, their energy,
Mm.
their feeling of kind of their North Star or where they are in the world. And
Mm.
so with adults, I work with people who want to work in that really holistic way.
Mm.
For just a quick kind of story, I am working currently with a lady with acne,
Mm.
and she has been down every medical route, every kind of laser route, and just hasn't budged it. And so we've been working on her gut health, and she called me the other day, and I often get quite tearful, happy tearful calls, and she said,
Yeah.
"This is the first day I've ever gone to work, ever in my life gone to work without makeup on."
Oh.
And she just said,
Oh.
to be seen is such an amazing thing, and like to feel like I can just not have to slather myself in foundation is such an amazing thing.
Yeah.
And she was doing a presentation in front of her work. So she works for a big, you'll know it, so a big franchise
Mm.
all over the world, very
Mm.
big global business. And bless her, she was doing a presentation and she gets crippled with anxiety. And she came to me for eczema, but she told me, and one of her symptoms is that she cannot sleep without the TV on because she gets so
Mm.
anxious. And I was like, that's actually kind of a big symptom. Let's work with that. And anyway, so she did this presentation and she was so worried about it, but we worked on her mindset and regulating her nervous system.
Mm.
Um, and she said to me that afterwards we'd visualized that she was going to stand on the stage and she was going to feel the same way that she does when she looks at a sunset. And that's what she
Oh.
wanted to do, was just kind of emanate this sunset feeling from her. And I said
Oh.
to her, you're going to be so relaxing and relaxed that afterwards people will come up to you and just say, I really felt your energy and I really feel calm, and so turning this big corporate presentation
Yeah.
into a kind of an energetic exchange almost.
Wow.
And anyway, she was so happy and she said she absolutely bossed the presentation. She
Yeah.
even enjoyed it.
Wow.
And that somebody came up to her afterwards and said, your energy is so calming. I don't, and
Mm.
so it's kind of setting that intention. And what I really love about it is that, you start working on something as superficial, let's say as acne,
Yeah.
but then you can't work with a person without working on every aspect of their life and who they are, so
Yeah.
to bring them into alignment with who they really are,
Mm.
and that's, yeah.
What a beautiful story to finish with, Ella. I mean, how lovely, and a good reminder for us all that we can, by the power with the power of our minds, what's possible when we go into, I'm gonna borrow that when I'm when I'm doing the next workshop I do, be the sunset.
Yeah, yeah,
Actually, I've got a sense that maybe maybe it's not sunset, but yeah, anyway.
something that
Going on.
relates to you, resonates for you,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. That's maybe a bit too calming for me. I'm a bit more bonkers, perhaps.
A waterfall or something.
What was
Yeah,
that?
a waterfall or
A
something like that.
waterfall,
The
something
energy.
energetic. Yeah.
Yeah. Lovely.
Anyway,
Well,
but
thank you so much for having me. It's been such a pleasure.
yeah, it's really nice to hear about your work and everything you've done and all your reflections on how it's been being part of Ignite Your Power. So, Ella, where can people find you online?
So my website is Ella is Full Spectrum Health with Ella. My Instagram is Full Spectrum Health with Ella, and I'm in the process of putting myself on LinkedIn,
Oh, yeah.
and putting myself out there much
Yeah.
more. But
Good.
Instagram or my website, and I do a 15-minute clarity call that people can
Great.
join, and I've got a nervous system regulation class every Monday that people can join.
Is that a
Um,
freebie or do you
that
pay, they pay for that?
it's a paid
Uh-huh.
it's a paid access, but then if
Yeah.
you want to work with me on a program, you get that's included in the program. So
Oh,
it's,
great.
yeah.
Lovely. Wonderful, Ella. Thanks so much. And yeah, maybe you can come again and we can talk more about nutrition. I'm so fascinated by, everything you're saying about gut health, and it's also alive for me. And, being a mother and all of that. I think so many people will resonate with what you're saying, and also, your wish that nutrition should be, more widely acknowledged as being important for health. And wouldn't it be lovely if it was taken on board by the health services, etc., etc. So yeah, wonderful. Thanks so
Thank you.
much,
Thanks so much.
Ella, and see you next time.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
So that was my conversation with Ella Carey of Full Spectrum Health. You can find the links in the show notes to how Ella's website, Full Spectrum Health with Ella, and find out how you can, what's available for you to join, the different support groups she has, and the ways you can work with her one-to-one, or visit her clinic in Cardiff if you're local to there. So, if you liked what you heard when Ella was talking about Ignite Your Power, I would be so delighted to meet with you and to hear about your situation. If you feel like you resonated with what she was saying about, just a need, maybe you feel a stuckness and that's manifesting in your life, and that there's a subconscious element to it. It's like maybe it's a pattern that just keeps coming back and you're really done with it. You're ready to heal. Maybe it's about procrastination. Maybe it's about feeling stuck. Maybe it's just about, I can't get to that next level. Whether it's in your business or your creative project or whatever it is, if you're feeling a sense of stuckness and you've been feeling it for some time and you've tried a number of different methods to overcome it, but the pattern remains, then I really think that Ignite Your Power might be something that you want to check out. You can find out more about it at truewealthwithbetty.com/ignite. The link is in the show notes. And you can also book a 30-minute call from that page to just have a chat with me, and let's hear if Ignite is something that is for you at this moment in your life where you're at. I'd be delighted to do that for you. Also, make sure you're on my mailing list, because I'm going to be offering some classes in the coming weeks before Ignite starts again in November. And just to say that at the moment, it's really, really well priced. As you heard in my conversation with Ella, I have set the price very low for what is on offer, this epic transformation and lifelong support that I'm offering. And I've done that intentionally. And no, it's not a money block. It's not a limiting belief. It's a response to, as you heard in that conversation, my own experience of having invested a huge amount of money and coming away feeling a little bit burnt by that experience. So I'm doing this on purpose. And the chances are it won't be this low forever. And it might be the only time that you'll be able to get this program at this price, at just £111 a month for 6 months, or $555 upfront. So yeah, it's an incredible price. I know it's an incredible price. I know the transformation on offer is incredible. And the people that have been attracted to me to come and be a part of this have been incredible. And I really think that, if this is resonating for you on any level, come and talk to me. And let's have a conversation. Let's see if it's a fit. I'd love to meet you and hear your story. And I'd love to support you if it feels right. So truewealthwithbetty.com/ignite for all the details about that. And just keep your eyes peeled, because there'll be other classes and offerings coming up in the run up to launching in November. All right, lots of love. See you next time.